On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks play basketball today. So I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about this Mavericks team because...
Uh-oh, guess what day it is?
I'm Luka Doncic and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
You are Locked On Mavs.
It's great, Rusty.
Your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast.
No one's dying.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Amazing.
Your team every day.
Still can't eat milk.
Welcome. You're locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being an everydayer and making Locked On Mavs your first listen today. Subscribe to our free newsletter, your one-stop shop for the best news and analysis on the Dallas Mavericks and the NBA, straight to your inbox every day. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today's episode, I'm giving you the ultimate NBA season preview for the Dallas Mavericks. Everything you need to know about each player on the roster going into the season because the Mavs play basketball today. It somehow felt like a really long time and not a long time at the same time. It felt like we've been waiting forever, but also the Mavs just played in June, which is not that far away, which is kind of wild. So I'm going to go through all that and let's just get right into it. I'm going right down the roster. I'm going to start with Luka Doncic. So whether you guys have listened to the whole offseason, we've done 5 days a week through this whole offseason, whether you listened every day or you're just checking back in, hopefully everybody can get something out of this. And I'm going to start with Luka Doncic. This is his season. This is it. This is his opportunity to prove that he is the best player in the NBA. He's been flirting with it back and forth. Is he top five? Is it him and Jokic? And even I've been like, I think Jokic is still the best player in the NBA. But this is Luka's opportunity this season. He's got continuity like he's never had. He's got talent around him like he's never had. And he's set up like he's never been set up before. This is Luka's opportunity. He has said recently after practice that he's not joking around to start the beginning of this season. He really wants to prove that this right now is his time. That he can win the MVP. The Mavericks are not joking. Luka aims to set the tone, prove that the Mavericks are not joking this season. They've got a redemption status to go through. All the stuff about, did you see the first night of the NBA? I'm sure you watched it like I did. You turn it on, and if you're like me, or I know you as a Mavs fan 100%, turned it on and saw the Celtics getting their rings and just like something inside of you just twisted, like just felt like the knife just twisted. Like, hey, remember that NBA Finals? Like, wasn't that close? I had to turn it immediately. I could not watch it. I was like, I don't have to live through this again. I was already there in Game 5 when they won and the Mavs had to walk off and all that. Got to see all the Celtics fans celebrating in the streets and in the arena until 5 a.m. and all that. But if you saw that game, Celtics come out and they hit a bunch of threes. And then there's this narrative afterwards. Even my good friend John Krause of Locked On Celtics had this narrative that it's Jason Tatum's revenge season. Revenge from what? Like, I feel like I'm doing the Noah, who's the sprinter? I feel like I'm doing the sprinter, like, world champions of what? Like, I feel like Noah Lyles. I feel like I'm doing that with Jason Tatum. He won the NBA title. He was on Team USA. Yeah, he didn't play that much, but he didn't shoot that well. For Luka, though, and for this Dallas Mavericks team, it's a real revenge season. To go back and to prove that their NBA Finals appearance wasn't a fluke. To prove that Luka Doncic is the best player in the NBA. He's got things to prove out there. Now, sure, Tatum has things to prove too. Like, I can hear the Celtics fans, like, I can hear them typing. I can hear them typing in the comment section. Shout out to everyone and all those Celtics fans that have watched every single episode of Locked On Mavs all through the offseason. That's real hater. That's real haterism right there. So Luka Doncic is his MVP race. For Kyrie Irving, the redemption cycle and the redemption storyline applies to him. At Media Day, take a drink every time we say at Media Day. At Media Day, I wanted to sit and ask and look him in the eye and say, what to you is the difference between home games and away games in the finals? Because he played so different. He played so differently in those two types of games. And for him, he talked about that wasn't the best version of me, admitting that he didn't play that well in those games, which is true. I mean, we all watched it. But then he started talking about how this team is battle tested. They want to go back and prove that it wasn't a fluke. They want to go back and prove that that's not the best version of ourselves, that we can be better. This was a Mavs team that went to the NBA Finals that was put together at the trade deadline, basically. They added 2 starters at the trade deadline. That is hard to do. To turn a team around like that, to add crucial pieces like that, to have Luka and Kyrie who missed games last season, all that kind of stuff. To put that all, to change all those pieces and then all of a sudden go on the run they did and go to the NBA Finals, like that just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen for a team to add crucial pieces like that and to go and win. Even when Pau Gasol got added to the Lakers that season, they went to the NBA Finals, but they didn't win that year. So for Kyrie, it's the redemption story. I think that is true. I think he has to prove, and I think it's specifically in Boston. If that comes up again, if they meet them in the finals again, or the one time that they're going to play in the regular season in Boston, it's going to be a big storyline for him. Outside of that, for Kyrie, it's his leadership and how his leadership continues to shape this team. Because, man, for everything that's ever been said about Kyrie Irving and everything that Kyrie has done that's warranted and not warranted for the reaction that it got, he has been amazing in Dallas. He has been a leader. He has stepped up in a lot of ways, and he has shown that he can be a really solid vet for this team. The Mavs, a couple years ago, I was talking about this team and why they kept losing games. And one of the things that I brought up, this was like the end of 2 years ago, the Mavs' fatal flaw was they didn't have leadership. When Jason Kidd has a leader on the court, he can win games. When they had Brunson and Dorian Finney-Smith, they could win games in 2022. The season in 2023, when they didn't win games, they didn't have that leader on the court. Kyrie had not morphed into this role yet. He had not grown into this role yet. And now he has. And Luka's starting to grow into that role too. And Lively has kind of grown into that role, and others have grown into this role now. Now they have the leadership. And I think it starts with Kyrie because I think he's been one of the biggest influences on this team. And I think that that's pretty awesome to look at him and to say, man, he is one of the best players on this team, and he's proven that he can be one of the best leaders on this team. It just doesn't happen very often. One of the reasons why his leadership has shown up, one of the ways his leadership has shown up is Klay Thompson. He was crucial in recruiting Klay Thompson. And Klay Thompson's narrative, and the thing to watch for Klay Thompson this season is how he fits with the Mavericks. Klay Thompson's season last year with the Warriors was up and down. Do this. Go to either my Instagram at Nick Van Exit or my TikTok at Nick Van Exit. Go find the video, the We Want Klay video from Fan Jam. The Mavs did a intra-squad scrimmage where it's just the Mavs versus the Mavs. And I'm sitting on the courtside seats looking at Klay Thompson as the crowd that filled the entire lower bowl is one of the most attended Fan Jams I've ever been to. The whole crowd is chanting, "We want Klay, we want Klay." And I look down the row and I can see Klay's face and you can tell he appreciated it and all that. And the comment section in both those videos are insane. If you want to hear about how Klay Thompson's season went last year, just go read those comment sections. It's a whole bunch of people saying, trash, washed, can't do anything. Oh, the Warriors should never have let go of Klay. They let go of an all-star. Klay was great last season. The Warriors gave up on him too quickly. They disrespected him. It's both sides of the spectrum on Klay. And I know that everything is polarized on social and comments and all that. But it's been fascinating to see all those notifications that I get of all these comments about Klay Thompson and about how Warriors fans, it's a lot of Warriors fans, about how they felt about Klay Thompson's season last year. He's not the same kind of player that he was. He's not going to be an all-defensive player. He's not coming in and all of a sudden we go, oh, the Mavs' point of attack defense is fixed. You're not saying that with Klay Thompson. But what he is going to bring to the Mavericks is really great three-point shooting. He's going to fix some of the consistency issues that the Mavs had with Tim Hardaway Jr. Yes. He's going to add a little bit more than what the Mavs had with Tim Hardaway Jr., or especially what they had with Dereck Jones Jr. as a starter offensively. He's going to hit a three. He's going to be able to attack a closeout. He's going to be able to work with the bigs. He's already shown a little bit of chemistry with Dereck Lively. We'll talk about that in a second. But Klay Thompson, how he fits with the Mavericks, how he fits into this role, and how he changes this team is going to be the thing to watch for Klay Thompson. Because the Mavericks in the playoffs, against the Thunder especially, and especially against the Celtics, they just needed one more guy. At times, they just needed one more guy that could stretch the floor, that could make a defense, make you pay. Like, you just watched as, Al Horford or Derek White or Drew Holiday or Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum just didn't have to guard Derek Jones Jr. or didn't have to guard Josh Green or didn't have to guard even PJ Washington, who we'll talk about here in a minute. And so they could leave them, and all of a sudden the driving lanes weren't there anymore. If they had one more guy that you just have to guard, right? Klay Thompson.
Still can't leave me open.
You can't. And so that's what Klay Thompson is going to bring to this Dallas Mavericks team. That's what we have to watch for with Klay Thompson. Coming up, let's talk about Dereck Lively, Daniel Gafford, the two bigs. They're going to bring a lot to this team. They kind of shape this team's mentality, and they shape this team's whole vibe in their attack. And so let's talk about them and what they're going to bring coming up.
You don't believe you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode of Locked On Mavs brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code LOCKEDONNBA. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. And that purchase can be of so many different things. You can go to a comedy show, concert, theater. I've used Game Time for all of those things. If you're watching this early enough in the day, you can go to Mavs vs. Spurs. Tickets are $42 on Game Time right now. So go check that out. Tickets for Texans at Cowboys on Monday, November 18th are $36. You can go to a Cowboys game cheaper than you can go to a Mavericks game right now, which is kind of amazing to me. Blackhawks at the Stars on Saturday. If you want to go to another sporting event, that's $18. All kinds of stuff on here. They also have concerts, like I said, comedy, theater, shows, things like that. Shakira coming in June to Globe Life Field. Go check that out. I love Game Time because you get to see the views from your seats. You get to see the all-in pricing feature. If you toggle that on, you can see exactly what you're going to pay at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, Locked On NBA, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, redeem that code, download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is, huh? Anybody?
Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad. That's what we call our listeners every day. Appreciate each and every one of you. Yes, Dirk.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is?
It's game day.
Oh.
It's game day. One of my favorite commercials from the Dirk era. I mentioned at the top of the show our newsletter. Subscribe. You'll get the newsletter straight to your inbox, to your email. It's your one stop for the best news analysis of the Dallas Mavericks and the NBA. You'll get a story from us. You'll get a story from our national writer, Katie Heindel, who is awesome. You'll get some fantasy, some NBA fantasy advice from Josh Lloyd, who is also awesome. You'll get links to the other great stories all across the internet as well. And the biggest reason why you should subscribe to our newsletter is because right now, currently, this show, that has the most subscribers of any Locked On NBA team show, does not have the most subscribers to the newsletter. You know who has the most subscribers? The Sacramento Kings. Locked On Kings has more subscribers than Locked On Mavs. So if that offends you, go to Locked On Mavs and subscribe to the newsletter. Click the link in the description if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to this, or you can go to lockedondaily.com to subscribe to the newsletter. And just subscribe. It's free, and I just want everyone to do it because we need to pass the Kings. Like, Matt George cannot have this satisfaction of beating us. All right, that's my piece on that. Let's get back to the Mavs season preview. Dereck Lively and Daniel Gafford. I want to combine these guys because they're just so important together. I'm going to start with Dereck Lively. Dereck Lively this offseason wanted to add some more things to his game. He already proved to be a good defensive player, a 16-game player, a player that can play all the way through the playoffs into the finals. Like, very, very rare for a center to be able to do that. Think about all the conversation about Rudy Gobert right now. And there's a lot of it. I watched Robert Horry on Dan Patrick's show talk about how Rudy Gobert doesn't deserve any of the Defensive Player of the Year awards he got because he can't even play in the playoffs. We are not talking about that about Dereck Lively, which is wild because he can play in the playoffs. Crazy. But offensively, Dereck Lively wanted to add threes to his game. I think we only saw one in the preseason. So I'm a little skeptical that he's going to add a three-point shot this season, but we'll see if that ends up working. But what he did add is some post-game, some workaround in the paint. And we saw some of that. We saw some floaters. We saw some, post-ups and things like that. And I think the Mavs having that extra wrinkle in their offense is going to be great. But the wrinkle that I think is going to be even more important is his handoff game. I mentioned this with Klay Thompson earlier. Klay and Lively stayed late at practice one day just working on handoffs. So Klay has the ball. He throws the ball to Lively. Lively has the ball. He stays stationary in one spot or pivots, and then Klay runs around him and Lively passes him off the ball. That takes timing, execution. That takes synergy and chemistry and knowing each other, knowing where you're going to go. And having those guys work together is going to be awesome. To have Lively set the right kind of screen so that he doesn't have a moving screen violation, to have Klay come off it the right way and to get the right spot so he can get a wide open shot. That's going to add so much that doesn't involve Luka or Kyrie at all. Remember all those times last year where it's like, if Luka and Kyrie don't do anything on this offense, nothing happens. There's nothing happening at all. They need some other kind of wrinkle. Dereck Lively, Klay Thompson together can add that extra wrinkle. And that's super important because those guys are going to add a lot to the starting lineup. And so Dereck Lively, I think he's going to be the starter, but Jason Kidd has kind of been coy with who's going to start at center for the Mavs. By the time you're listening to this, maybe you know who's going to start at center on Thursday in the season opener against the Spurs. But Daniel Gafford has made his case. And Kidd, I think, has either dangled the carrot in front of Daniel Gafford or really considers Daniel Gafford on par with Dereck Lively and wants to make it a competition. Gafford, what you need to watch for with him this season, he gained 20 pounds over the offseason. At least that's what he said. And so he beefed up a little bit more. He's the bruiser for the Mavericks, and he takes advantage of that. You saw it in that Jazz game in the preseason. He just takes advantage of anybody in front of him, and the Mavs are going to use that in a great way. He's got great chemistry with Luka, and we'll see about his role as a starter or who he plays against. I think there are some games that he's going to start ahead of Lively, even if Lively's healthy. I still think that. Should it happen? Probably, maybe not. But I think it could happen because I think that's the way Jason Kidd thinks, right? But
You gotta ask them. I'm just a coach.
So Daniel Gafford, those two together, Lively and Gafford, add so much to what the idea of this team is. Without those two, this team is probably the same team from like 2023, honestly. You need that backbone, that core, and Lively and Gafford make everything work like that. The wings, we got some wings to talk about too. PJ Washington, he worked on his shot this summer with the Mavs. He's going to get a ton of opportunities and open looks in that starting lineup. So working on that shot, reworking that shot, super important for him. I think that's one thing to watch for PJ Washington is how he hits open threes, how many open threes he gets, and what he does with some of those opportunities. His very first attempt in the preseason, his first shot attempt in preseason was a post up against James Harden, taking advantage of a mismatch, going against a guy that's smaller than you, taking advantage of other teams saying, like the Clippers said, all right, PJ, you're the worst offensive player, or you're the least threatening offensive player in this lineup of Luka, Kyrie, Klay, and Lively. Or was it Gafford? You're the least threatening player, so let's hide James Harden on you. All right, well, PJ's got to make sure that you can't hide a player on him. That's what to watch for him. The two other wings, Najee Marshall, Quentin Grimes, the new guys, huge for this team. They are replacing Derrick Jones Jr., replacing Josh Green, replacing Tim Hardaway Jr. a little bit. Najee Marshall, they call him the knife. He can do a bunch of different things. But the thing that's most important for him, the thing that I want everyone to watch him and enjoy from him this season, his defense. He wants to defend so well. That's what he wants to be known for. At Media Day, take a drink. At Media Day, we asked him about his defense, and he said, I want to defend so well on this team that other players that are not considered good defenders that I play with are considered good defenders by the end of the season. That's kind of I still am blown away by that answer because I think that is just I want my defense to be so good it rubs off on others. That's awesome. I think that's great. And I'm excited to see his defense and excited to see how the Mavs implement him, how they use him and all that. Offensively, I think he adds a level of like a dynamic level to this team because he can run it out in transition. He can handle the ball in transition. We saw some floaters. We saw some other things in transition that were pretty exciting that the Mavs wings in the past couldn't do. And then we also saw him run some pick and roll with Dereck Lively a couple times. And that was kind of fun. That was kind of fun to see too. And so I'm excited to see what Najee Marshall brings to this team. Quentin Grimes. Jason Kidd featured Quentin Grimes a lot in the preseason. And I know Luka was out all preseason. There was other guys out all preseason. But I think Kidd really likes Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes can defend and he can shoot the three. Like he can do those two things. You know, he's talked about before. He doesn't want to just be a 3-and-D player. He can handle the ball a little bit. He can pull up and take a shot a little bit here and there. But I'm curious to see how crucial he becomes for the Mavericks. Because you start going up and down the roster, and especially those first three guys, Luka, Kyrie, Klay, like there's not a lot of two-way guys, and you got to have those guys in your rotation. You can go down the roster to Dinwiddie, Hardy, Maxey, like Dwight Powell. Like you start going down the roster, and you're like, man, there's just not a lot of guys that are considered real two-way guys. And if Quentin Grimes is one of those, then you've got to play him because you can't play three or four guys that are just only play one way anymore. Look at how good that Celtics team is because their best four guys can play two ways really well, almost elite level. That's why they're so good. And so Quentin Grimes, watch how crucial he becomes. Watch how many games he closes too, because I think his defense and his ability to shoot the three will be super important. I think he's going to close some games for the Mavericks. And I think that could be super important for the Mavs going forward because he can do a little bit more. But his defense was really good that year for the Knicks. And he had a knee injury and he's worked through it. And it seems like he's back 100% and he's got no issues and wasn't held back by anything in the offseason. And so all that is super important. And Quentin Grimes is going to add a lot to this team. Kid seems to already like him a lot. And so I'm really curious to see what they do with Quentin Grimes and what they decide to, how they decide to use him and how much Kid decides to use him. Because I kind of think he could start taking away some of Klay's minutes. I know that's tough to think about because they added Klay and they, have him on this pedestal right now, but I think Quentin Grimes can still grow. He's 24 years old. He can still grow into his role too. You got Klay going to be 35, and you got Klay that's 34, and Quentin Grimes is 24. You got to weigh the two right there. And one of them's rising, and the other one's on his way down from his career. So Quentin Grimes, watch out for him. Definitely a player to watch. Another player to watch for the Mavs is Spencer Dinwiddie, Jaden Hardy. Those two guys as the backup guards for the Mavs. It's kind of an interesting back and forth. So coming up, let's talk about those two guys and what they're going to bring to the team and more. Coming up.
You don't believe you shouldn't be here.
Today's episode of Locked On Mavs brought to you by Prize Picks. Oh, Prize Picks is back. That means the NBA season is back. You got to love that because Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Go check out and see what Prize Picks has available for you. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Go see what is available. Prize Picks is the best way to get in on the action in sports in over 30 states, including deep in the heart of Texas. Texas, right. Can't gamble, but you can do Prize Picks. So check it out. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts. Taco Tuesday. Oh, I almost said it like LeBron. Isaac would have killed me if I said it. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select players' projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineup. So go check it out. See what's available. Download the app today. Use that code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON NBA, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. So just play $5. Play the first lineup here on opening night for the Mavs, and you get $50 instantly. Go check it out. See what's available. Prize Picks. Run your game.
That's it. It's me versus the machines. The Matrix is taking over. That's it. They want us to be perfect. Basketball isn't perfect. It's beautiful.
That's right, Kyrie. That's right, Kyrie. All right, Isaac, let's get into the rest of the players here. I'm going down your ultimate preview. Get ready. Buckle up. This is going to be rapid fire to get through the rest of these. Spencer Dinwiddie. The Mavs brought him back to the Mavericks. He was on the team in 2022, had that huge dunk against Gobert in the playoffs in the first round, had a 30-point game in Game 7 when the Mavs destroyed the Suns in that epic Game 7 in the second round. And they brought him back because they needed another ball handler. And they've kind of positioned him as this spot starter for the Mavericks because they really needed another ball handler. Like watching the playoffs and especially against the Celtics, they just needed one more guy to handle the ball. And then Dinwiddie didn't really play that well in preseason. So it's kind of to be determined what his role is going to be to me. Because they brought him back as this guy, fills an obvious need, can be a spot starter for Luka and Kyrie who do miss games, and yet he didn't really look that good. And so what do we do with him? I don't know. But I know what Jaden Hardy wants to do with him. He wants to push him out of the way, right? Like he's not going to say that. He's probably not going to do that. But Jaden Hardy signed a new extension, 3 years, $18 million. Doesn't sound like a lot in NBA terms. But at practice today on Wednesday, he said, I'm coming for more, which you got to love. I love how Hardy approaches, the game I love how he approaches practice and how he approaches work. This guy, Jaden Hardy, works really hard. And he wants to be good. And he has followed Kyrie around like a little puppy. And it's been awesome to see him learn and grow from him. And between Dinwiddie and Hardy, these two guys, I think, are going to be linked together on the Mavs because they're the backup guards. And they're the guys that are coming in. And when the Mavs need some extra offense and some offensive creation, especially, maybe Luka's out, maybe Kyrie's out, or maybe one of them is just sitting. They're going to need somebody else to come in and add some more offensively. Give them a punch. Give them something. And so what can either of those guys do? What Dinwiddie needs to get better at is working better with the bigs, because he has not been a good lob thrower in his career. He's not been a great pick and roll guard. He's been a good isolation attack, and he's been a good spot up shooter on the Mavericks. Jaden Hardy has been a really good spot up shooter for the Mavericks and has shot really well. And he's kind of added a little bit of a mid-range game where he can hit a little step back, pull up mid-range jumper, which has been awesome. But he's got to work much better, and he's been actually really good at making decisions with the ball. He's had synergy with bigs and with other wings, and he's actually made some really good passes to some guys. But where he needs to get better at, and again, he said this to us at Media Day and agreed, he's got to get better as a decision maker. Overall, just has to make better decisions. He can do a bunch of things, but he doesn't know when to do a bunch of things. And so I think for Jaden Hardy, it's that. And for Dinwiddie and Hardy, it's a little bit of a clash to who's going to fill up those secondary guard minutes after Luka and Kyrie. Okay, end of the roster here. Maxi Kleber. He missed all of preseason, but he's been practicing, and I think he's still a crucial part of this team. His shot last year, it looked like he was a little bit hesitant. He was out with an injury, came back, and again, he missed all of preseason this year, but the Mavs are still going to need him to be that spacing big, to give him a different look. Maybe Lively and Gafford don't give him enough spacing to get the job done on offense, and you need somebody to go in and space the floor but still be able to defend credibly on the other end. Maxey is still that guy to give you that other look. Those kind of things are crucial against really good teams because you got to be able to do different things. You got to be able to show different looks, especially in the playoffs. So Maxey still crucial on this team, but we're watching him, and I don't think his role is going to be very big in the regular season because I think they're going to want to hold him and keep him healthy for the playoffs, which is kind of wild. He's going to get load managed in a weird way. Omax Prosper. Mavs drafted him last year. Isaac really wanted him on the team. He presents an obvious position of need where they need size. They need another wing player. I mentioned the two-way guys. They need some two-way guys, but he has not really taken that step forward. He played okay last year. He came in and played in spurts for the Mavericks, played really well for the G League team, the Texas Legends. But in Summer League this year, he didn't really stand out that much. His game is not really one that's necessarily going to stand out in Summer League because he's a complementary player. He's a defender. He's a hustle guy. He's an energy guy. And so I'm looking to see how Omax Prosper can even break through. How can he break through? Because Klay is going to get a bunch of wing minutes. PJ, Najee, Quentin Grimes, that's 4 guys ahead of him that are going to play a lot of wing minutes. And then there's going to be 3 guard lineups too. There are going to be times when it's Luka, Kyrie, and Dinwiddie. Luka, Kyrie, and Hardy. And so I'm curious to see how Omax even breaks through on this roster to even get, and then in Maxey's probably going to get wing minutes too because there's going to be times he plays in big lineups where he plays next to Lively and Gafford. So Omax's role is not expected to be big, but if he starts really taking a leap forward, he could break through that, I think. Speaking of breaking through, Dante Exum did not break through in the playoffs very well last year. And I thought that he got demoted in a way. And then Jason Kidd came out in training camp and said that he was the second string point guard, that he was ahead of Dinwiddie and ahead of Hardy in the rotation. And so then now Dante Exum is out with a wrist injury. He had surgery. He's going to be out until January, so he's out for 3 months. And so what happens with him when he comes back? And what happens with his roster when he comes back? All the things I said about Dinwiddie and Hardy don't really take into account Exum's spot in this because all offseason before Exum injury, it was Exum versus Dinwiddie versus Hardy. It was all 3 of them together. Who's going to get more minutes? Who's going to be used more? Dante Exum represents more of a, he's more of a calming presence as a playmaker, doesn't look for his own shot that much, and is a better defender than either of the other two by a lot. And so there's that with Dante Exum. So I'm curious to see what happens with there. All right, very end of the roster. Dwight Powell. What you need to watch this season with Dwight Powell is how many times he gets hit in the face. If you have not noticed this trend on Twitter, it's all the time, every time that he plays, and there are some accounts that do this. Dwight Powell gets hit in the face so much. So if you don't follow this on Twitter, just know that watch Dwight Powell whenever he plays to see how many times he gets hit in the face. Markieff Morris, he got added to this roster. He did not have a roster spot, and then they made one by demoting AJ Lawson, basically. But Markieff Morris is still like a crucial vet on this team, because remember last season when the Mavericks lost 5 out of 6 games, and this was right before they made their big run. The Mavs had a players-only meeting led by Markieff Morris, and has been a crucial vet for this team. He was part of their off-season meeting. Like the Mavs had a players-only like off-season meeting in California, and they were on like a yacht and did some bunch of like team bonding stuff. And Markieff Morris was there. He didn't even have a roster spot yet. This team still considers him part of the team, and so he's crucial to all that. His play on the court is not as crucial anymore, but he's crucial as a vet. And so he's still important to this team. So what to watch from him? I guess just on the bench. Watch for him on the bench to do team building things. Trust falls. I don't know. The two-way guys. Jazz Gortman, Jay-Z and Gortman. He earned a two-way spot. Not often do the Mavericks bring in a guy on an Exhibit 10 contract or like a training camp contract, and then that player makes the team. Doesn't happen very often, but it happened with Jazz Gortman. He came in and basically, so I mentioned Markieff Morris got AJ Lawson demoted from a regular spot to a two-way spot. And then AJ Lawson had that two-way spot. And then Jazz Gortman came in and kind of took that two-way spot from him because he played really well. He was the number 11th ranked player in the 2022 high school class. And so he was a highly ranked player. He was a guy that was looking like he was going to be a first-round pick. He signed with Overtime Elite and didn't go to college. And then he kind of got overshadowed at Overtime. And then he played in the summer league with the Mavericks, and Jason Kidd said that he played terrible. Like literally came out and said he played terrible, but then used that to say he praised Jazz Gortman for the work that he's done this offseason and the work that they've seen him put in. And so watch out for Jazz Gortman. He's a shifty guard that can get his own shot. He's a pesky defender. He's 6'2", but a 6'9" wingspan. Like he's a guy that could really add something to this team and could add another playmaker that the Mavs could need in some spots. Brandon Williams is on the other two-way spot. He was a two-way for the Mavericks last year. He played 17 games for the Mavericks last year, but I see him as mostly a G League player again this season. So if you're going to go to a Texas Legends game, you'll probably see Brandon Williams. Kessler Edwards did not play in the preseason at all, but he's played for the Nets and he's played for the Kings in the past. He's played 138 NBA games. He's had 27 NBA starts, and he's just 24 years old. He got injured, so he missed all of preseason, but he's 6'8" with a 6'11" wingspan, and he's like another wing. If the Mavs need a wing, let's say PJ Washington goes down with an injury, or Najee Marshall or Klay or whoever, then all of a sudden Kessler Edwards could be in the running for some minutes. So last thing I want to get to here, Jason Kidd. This is the best opportunity he's had with the Mavs to put players in the right spots. He said that this is the deepest Mavs team ever. He said it's deeper than 2011 when they won the NBA title. He was on that team. He would know. But this is Jason Kidd's opportunity. One of the things for Jason Kidd that stands out to me this offseason was, if you go to The Athletic, Tim Cato used to do this survey where he surveyed Mavs fans. He went through and he said, what's your confidence level in Jason Kidd? And when the Mavs missed the postseason, the confidence level was like 1 or 2 on the scale. And then last year when the Mavs went to the NBA Finals, the confidence level in Jason Kidd was like a 4 or a 5. Mavs fans are bought back into Jason Kidd, and this is his opportunity to really put this team in a great position. He's got all the tools. He's got all the pieces. He got the leaders, like I mentioned at the beginning, and this is his chance. So I'm curious how fans react to Jason Kidd if something starts to go wrong with this team, or if they play really well, then does he get pushed up farther and like the best coaches in Mavs history this year, right? Like they win the finals. He's up there with, Don Nelson and Rick Carlisle, and I don't know, then we have to start talking about ranking them. There you go. That's what you need to know about the Mavericks players this season. Again, subscribe to our newsletter. It's a free newsletter. Your one stop for the best news and analysis on the Mavericks and the NBA straight to your inbox. Go to LockedOnDaily.com to subscribe to that. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me on Locked On Mavs. We'll be back tomorrow with a post-game show. Me and Slightly Biased and Isaac Harris will be at the arena, and so we'll all break it down. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs. Peace out.